Hello, I'm Simon, and welcome back to the Bookster podcast from inside the SaaS holiday rental software company Bookster, based in Edinburgh, Scotland. Follow along as Bookster discuss their inner workings and their journey to where they are today. Now, thank you for joining us, and we hope you find these conversations insightful, but ultimately helpful. Now, as always, I'm joined by Robin Morris, Managing Director and co-founder of Bookster. Morning, Robin.
Good morning. Morning.
Nice to see you again.
Nice to see you too.
We're lucky enough as well today to be joined by Colin Guthrie, a technical director with Bookster. Morning, Colin.
Good morning.
And also
How are you?
co-founder as well, actually. I've neglected
co-founder
to
as
tell you
well.
that.
Fantastic. So you can blame both of you then.
Co-founder.
Co-founder. Lovely. How are you, Colin?
I'm very well, thank you. Yes.
Good. Interesting conversation we're going to have, I think. Some strong views on it, I can tell already without even starting. Today's conversation is going to be about initially about the visitor levy and how it has impacted Bookster and what you do at Bookster. So perhaps, I don't know if one of you wants to kick off with what sort of the visitor levy is we're talking about and sort of take it from there, shall we?
Yeah, I mean, I could. So, yeah, I wanted to, I suppose, even more broadly talk about the impact of various bits of legislation or changes in the law that have affected us over the years. But, the one that's looms for us because of our geographic location is a visitor levy. So I suppose broadly speaking, there's been a few things that have kind of crossed our paths, and we'll maybe not go into too much depth on them. But before the visitor levy, there was the STL licensing. So there's a sort of licensing legislation for our clients that was Scotland-wide, but has been in other locations where we operate. And a couple of other previous things, GDPR, so regulations around storing private information, personal information or information that can identify people. That had a reasonable impact on us too, in terms of us having to change coding, etc. And the first time we really kind of were hit by anything in kind of our context was copyright, where one of our clients uploaded a bunch of photos onto their website, but sort of ultimately came back to us being sued for the copyright holder of those images. So that was quite a few years ago now, but those are the kind of the things that have kind of flown into at us from the side, I suppose, in terms of legal battles or things where laws have changed and we've had to react. But at the moment, right now, the one that we're wrestling with, and I suppose be interested to hear Colin's views, because he's kind of leading implementation of our attempt to model it inside our software, is the impact of something called the Visitor Levy, which is a Scotland-wide thing, but it's happening in Edinburgh first. And essentially what it is like a tourist tax, basically. But Colin, I'll let you maybe explain, and then we can talk about the pros and some of the cons of the way that it's being done. Yeah.
Absolutely, yeah. So just on broad strokes, the Scottish Government have created a framework that local councils and areas can implement in order to collect a visitor levy, as they call it. They're going to great lengths not to call it a tax, but I think we can all agree it's a tax. It's not just for tourists, it's for anyone who doesn't live there. So it could be for anyone coming to work. So if someone's coming to work on a temporary contract or anything like that, they're liable for the levy. So you can argue not calling it a tourist tax, but visitor tax would be a fairer name, I think. However, the framework that the Scottish Government has created is essentially giving a lot of rope to the councils on which to hang themselves, really. by creating quite a flexible structure that allows them to charge in different ways. Now, having sort of looked at different tourism taxis, city taxis and stuff like that around various geographies that we work in, most of the systems are very sort of separate. You've probably been to places yourself where you make a holiday booking and they just say, oh, there's a tourist tax when you arrive and you have to pay it in cash at the desk or whatever. And I've had to do that several times, and it's almost always a per person per night or number of nights based fixed fee. Might be a couple of euros a night per person or something like that. Now, in their wisdom, the government's created a framework that's allowed for different pricing models, namely a percentage-based model. Now, that creates, by its very nature, creates a much bigger problem because it has to tie together the two systems rather than having a levy that is just very easily collectible. And fair enough, for places that have a front desk, they can collect it and remit it on your behalf, but such a system could easily be implemented with a very basic QR code these days that takes the guest to a link, says how many people, how many nights, here's how much it is, press your thumb, pay by Apple Pay, it's all done. The money goes to the government straight away. There's no administration, there's no hassle. The people at the front desk, all they have to do is make sure that the person does it, really.
Yeah.
That's a very, very simple structure. But by making it percentage-based, you're pulling in a lot more stakeholders. You're pulling in the people that are when the booking's made. So due to European legislation on price transparency, you have to show what you will pay ultimately at the end of the day. You don't necessarily need to collect all the money. So when booking a holiday, you might be £1,000 for a holiday, and either that includes the visitor levy, or you have to state there is an additional visitor levy and you'll be liable for this, and it's this much. So if it's percentage based, at the time of booking, that calculation has to be made. Now, it's gone through various iterations of including the channel markup if it's booked through, for example, Airbnb. So do they take a percentage of that additional percentage that they take? Do they not? Do they charge for linen and cleaning? Do they include all this? This has gone through various rounds of discussion over the months leading up to now. They've eventually come to the model where they have to take the percentage of everything that's basically not optional. So if you opt for something extra, an additional change, an additional clean, you're not charging the levy on that, but anything that is part of the basic cost, you will charge the levy on, and that includes any channel markup. So at the moment, the levy is a 5% charge in Edinburgh. Now, that is limited to the first 5 nights only. So this is the framework that the council has been given to work within, and this combination of two things, the percentage-based model and the limiting to the number of nights model, is causing quite a few issues in the supply chain as a result of that. So, as I said, the place where you book has to show the price, either inclusive of the tax, of the levy, or a breakdown of what it will be. If you don't show it, then the host has to be liable for paying it on the guest's behalf. That's due to price transparency legislation. So, like Airbnb, Booking.com, Vrbo, they all have to display this information calculated correctly. The people that are further down the chain, like ourselves, we have to be able to calculate it and store the relevant values, note when it's been paid, when it's not been paid, and ultimately produce to our clients the sufficient data that they will need in order to subsequently remit the levy funds that they have collected. Now, this is due to go live in about 26 days time. As things stand at the moment, we have no guidance on how to remit the tax. Now, that is a crazy situation to be in, that we don't know what data we need to actually store in order to remit it. We can take a good guess at what we need to store, obviously, but the fact that things are getting pushed ahead without the whole pipeline being known, tested, and available for implementation prior to launch is, quite frankly, mind-blowing. I can't understand why anyone would push ahead with a platform like this. A further issue around this is one that's typically affected by workers coming in for contracts. So there's been various guidance on who's due the levy or how it's due, etc. Now, say I'm a company and I have several workers staying at a property. So I've booked my property. I've booked it for 10 days. Now, it just so happens that it's a one-bedroom apartment. And for the first 5 nights, Bob is coming to stay and he's doing some groundwork on a building site. And then after 5 days, Bob's done, he leaves, and Frank comes along. And Frank's now doing the block work, building up from the building site. Now, both of them stay for 5 days, but the booking is for 10 days. Now, under the examples given, they wish to charge the levy twice, because it's 2 different people, they're both staying for 5 days, that is full 5 nights for both of them. Even though the booking made by the company is for 10 nights,
Right, okay.
they will have to pay the levy twice. Now, the problem with that is that you now have to break down that booking into 2 bookings in order to calculate your levy as a percentage of the first 5 nights. So all of these platforms out there, from Airbnb, Booking.com, everything down, at the time of booking, you now have to say if you're booking it for one person or if you're going to have a changeover in the middle of the stay in order to calculate the levy, in order to show the price transparency, in order to go that through. So there's a whole bunch of problems in this whole supply chain that are just not being addressed. And we're expected to implement it now to start charging in 26 days' time. So it's a bit of a crazy situation to be in, to be frank. So, yeah.
I mean, I think some things it's kind of easy just to write it down, but then implications, I mean, certainly splitting up bookings like that. Also, I mean, I suppose for us, because most of our clients are most of the time it's tourists that they're, so a single booking does represent a single stay. So for us, most of the time that doesn't apply. But just the very fact that it sits there saying, "Well, this is a thing," it's like, well, how can you represent that at all? Can you represent this kind of serial stay situation? And maybe the answer is, no. It's very, very difficult. The other thing that they seemed to be saying as well, which was essentially, say you had a 7-night stay, and cost of the booking was say £700 or whatever. They want the 5 nights, so the 5% of the first 5 nights, to be based on the rate, not the price of the booking. So it's whatever the rate of those 5 nights would be, not. So like if you decided to stay for 5 nights and not 7 nights, it's what that price would be, maybe. It's not entirely clear.
Yeah.
Rather than doing it pro rata and just dividing it by 7 and multiplying it by 5. But that's insane, because you might not even have a 5-night price. You might literally just always market your property at 7-night stays, because you don't. So there is no nightly rate, basically. But you could also, if you were being a total idiot about it, you could say, right, well, the first 5 nights are free if you book a 7-night stay, and the 2 nights, that's where all the rate is. So the levy is zero.
Right. Okay.
So it's just a silly thing to put in. It doesn't make any sense. It's a silly thing to put in, but it's what they've written down, and what they, when we've asked the question, they've clarified it, saying, yeah, that is what we want. It's like, well, that's actually impossible.
Yeah, they say the advertised nightly rate, but pricing is rarely just, here's the nightly rate, add up how many nights you're staying, and that's the price. There are various things layered on top. Cleaning costs that might be based on the length of stay. You might have prices that are higher at the weekend, etc. So your nightly rate will go up. You might have discounts that are based on the length of stay. So as you stay longer, the price gets cheaper. Therefore, the effective nightly rate is changed. I mean, the way our pricing works is we don't calculate a nightly rate at once a booking is made. We might have nightly rates somewhere. They ultimately get compounded, discounted, adjusted for various rules around length of stay, how many people are staying, etc. We never actually back calculate that to an effectively nightly rate that varies over the booking stay. We just have the price for the booking. So we really have no way of implementing the levy without massively changing our architecture or simply saying we're going to have to do this in a sort of pro rata way. We're going to take the price of the booking and divide it by the number of nights and times it by 5. That's pretty much the only way we can do it without radically changing our whole architecture. So again, the implementation of this by going down a percentage model, by going down a limited number of nights model, they're creating a whole bunch of problems. Now, I think that this is almost the most galling thing, is that there seems to be no communication with the stakeholders or the people involved when devising this scheme. And all of these problems are obviously coming to light. Now, the other thing as well that I think irritates me particularly is, for years in Britain, we've been told about austerity and how, everyone needs to make efficiency savings and we need to cut down on complicated processes and this, that, and the other. And here they are, they've implemented a scheme where they're pushing all of the administration practically down onto the people in the industry to run this system for them. They're pushing all of the complicated bits that need to be done to keeping records, getting the money from the guests, taking the payments, however it is, submitting that on behalf of the guests. They're basically pushing out all of the administration of the whole system into the wider economy. And I don't think there's been any kind of economic impact assessment as to how much that actually costs. So they can't then do an analysis of say, well, what if we were to centralize the system? This would cost us X amount to run. But we don't know how much saving for the economy that would actually produce. So, I mean, that's more of a political point than a technical point, but it just seems insane that things have got to this level, and at the 11th hour that we're in this situation.
I suppose, broadly speaking, it's just one of these things where it's like, a lack of thinking about the complexity of what you're asking people to do. And, not just thinking, right, okay, well, if we just keep this nice and simple. I mean, the other sort of end of this, which Colin did touch on before, in terms of getting the money from the guest to the council. So that's the kind of next bit, which we haven't really talked about. But again, like, it would be very obvious or very clear, very easy, I suppose, if you just said, right, guest has to pay the council. Okay, here's a QR code. It's very simple. Money goes from the guest to the council. Done. If there was some, thought of that, but that's not what they're doing. Instead, the money goes to who knows where. It goes to booking.com, and then it goes to the agent. Then it maybe goes to the owner, and then the owner is actually the person who's responsible for paying it. So it has to go through all these hoops. And at each of those moments, what does it increase, turnover towards the VAT threshold? Which, yes, it does. So you're going to get people who were under a VAT threshold are pushed over a VAT threshold. So it means all of their services, some quickly become 20% more expensive, plus the 5%, or 20% more expensive. But there's also just that complexity. Why bother with that? Why bother with any of that? It's not needed. Just, if you set up one system that said, right, okay, you've got to push your guest to this, system, basically at some point, tell us the value of the booking, and we'll tell the guest how much they need to pay, and they pay the council directly. So yeah, we still have to work out the value of the booking or whatever, and it might be there's a little bit of complexity there, but there's totally no need for us to be the ones collecting it all and then going through some other system to remit it to the to the uh, to the council. It's just
Too
stupid.
many steps.
So
Yeah.
it seems like a very unnecessary step. Yes.
Yeah.
And
I guess
so yeah,
what obviously a lot of work involved for you guys to get this up and running properly and do it, and then is there a chance in 6 months' time they say actually it's not working, we're going to stop again?
I think the issue, things like this that the Scottish Government have trialled in the past. I think some other schemes like the deposit return scheme and a few others as well. They're very much go to the 11th hour until people, the industry voices that have been shouting loudly all the way through the process are finally heard, and someone who has been spearheading these campaigns have finally had their blinkers forcefully removed and admit that there is a climb down. Now, I'm still hopeful that that will happen in Edinburgh, and at very least it will be delayed from starting at the 1st of October. But the problem is that all of the people need to start doing the work a long time ago in order to meet the deadline that they've introduced. So if they cancel it on the literally the 11th hour, the work still has to be done, and we've still invested in that. We are kind of fortunate in that Bookster has quite a complex layered pricing system. So while we don't calculate an effective price per night, we do have a system which ultimately it's duration based extra calculations. So we can vary the calculation that we implement depending on how long someone is staying. Now, in a percentage model, we can use a little mathematical trick that 5% of a 5-night stay, that's very easy to calculate because that's that, but 5% of the first 5 nights of a 10-night stay, that on the face of it is a bit more complex, but we can just use percentages in a clever way. And as long as we're prorating the whole price of the holiday and not back calculating to an individual price, then we can say, well, actually, 5% of the first 5 nights of a 10-night stay prorated is the same as 2.5% of the whole stay.
Okay.
Because that's maths.
Yeah.
So we can use our existing duration-based discounting platform calculation that's built into our engine in order to calculate that levy. It's not totally trivial for us because when you're dealing with percentage-based extras, you also have to be careful about compounding. So we have various options. You can have fixed cost extras, you can have percentage-based extras, and these can be add-ons, mandatory fees for cleaning or for service fees or concierge fees or however people want to structure it. However, the order of which you apply them can affect what price you get at the end of it. So if you add in your fixed fees first and then take a percentage, that's different to taking a percentage and then adding in your fixed fees. So we have effectively levels that we chunk these calculations into. We do the accommodation cost and then a whole bunch of extras that can apply at the accommodation cost, and they all apply. Percentages are all calculated from the same base value. They don't the value that you calculate the percentage off doesn't change within that column. We then add that all up and get a new total, and then we go on to the next stage, which is a total rather than accommodation costs. And then we can have another round of extras that are percentage based that work off the total. And again, they all work off the same base value. They don't compound within their lane. Now, unfortunately, we don't really have one that is then beyond that for a calculation of a levy, which has to happen after everything else has been done. So we do need to change architecture a bit to introduce a new way and another sort of stage of being able to do these calculations and being a bit more flexible. Is that the council phoning us to tell them they've delayed it? That would be good.
Stop talking about it.
So we do have to make some architectural changes. It's a bit more work. It'll probably take quite a lot of profiling to make sure that it's as efficient as before. It might not be because of the way that we're having to change things in order to introduce this. So yeah, there's a lot of effort that we have to make up until the point at which they may or may not delay it.
Right.
And so already it's costing the economy money as a result of that. So yeah.
And is there any,
That's
obviously from your point of view, it's a pain and a lot of work, etc. Have you had feedback from your clients about, in terms of like Robin said, it takes people into a different threshold of tax and all that sort of stuff?
Yeah,
Are they sort of
very
then
much
worried?
so.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, clients are already rattled. The guidance, although it's relatively clear, there's a lot with the STL industry. There's a lot of smaller stakeholders. It's not dominated by 5 or 6 big supermarket chains that have to collect bottles and return them, like the deposit return scheme. There's a lot of very small stakeholders. So they get the information, they have to interpret the information. Not everyone can interpret it correctly or 100% accurately. So we do have our clients asking us about it. We do have some clients actually who incorrectly started adding in an extra within our platform currently within the current pricing structure that is wrong because we don't support the new mode that I've just been talking about yet. It's not released yet. So they started charging it now for bookings now, and that is wrong on 3 fronts. A, they shouldn't have been doing it at that particular time. B, the calculation was wrong. And C, it's only actually, we were supposed to start taking the levy now, on the 1st of October, sorry, but only for bookings that are arriving after the 24th, I think, of July next year in 26. So any bookings that come in between now and then, the levy won't apply to.
Right.
And it's only the bookings that come in after the 1st of October for holidays that are staying on or after the 24th of July that the levy is actually liable for. So clients were rushing it, they were panicking, they were doing things, they were getting things wrong. So we have to be clear that we are going to be implementing something to support them. And we will release guidance as soon as we can. But by the same token, we couldn't realistically have done development and implementation on this too early because they've been changing it quite frequently, and there is still the hope, beyond hope, that it will be delayed, it will be made simpler, it will take a lot of pressure off the actual industry, because the industry has been fairly under pressure of late. Due to other issues in especially in Edinburgh, as this is one of the focuses, the STL licensing, which is one of the other issues that Robin mentioned, where short-term let properties and owners have to go through a licensing scheme that should have been a simple registration process, but again has been slightly misconstrued, I would say, from what it should have been, into essentially a council decision to try and cut down, obviously, on the number of short-term let properties within Edinburgh. So,
I think with the STL licensing scheme, it's sort of looking at it from a kind of our perspective in terms of software, actually didn't have any effect really on us at all. Like there wasn't anything we needed to do really. I mean, a very small amount. Obviously, it has an enormous effect on our clients, and then as a result, it's definitely had a very negative effect on us as a business. But we didn't actually need to do anything technically, as it were. So it's kind of different issues. Whereas the levy, I think almost it's the reverse in a way. To our clients, they'll need to do it, and maybe not the reverse. I mean, they'll still a lot of stress and a lot of effort for them, but there's just a much bigger impact on us trying to do it, trying to figure out how to. And I think the other, I mean, if there was no STL licensing scheme, or if there wasn't such a big push to reduce the number of STLs or whatever, if they wasn't so punitive, to some extent this could be an advantage for us, because it sort of has slightly localized some of the requirements to run an STL in Edinburgh, and maybe by extension in Scotland, that some other competitors of ours may not actually support this thing, and therefore it actually might give us a competitive edge. So although Colin hates it with a passion that you can hear coming out of the screen, and I think there is a kind of maybe it certainly would have been if there wasn't such pressure on reducing the number of STLs. It would have probably almost certainly been an advantage for us but it may still prove to be the case if it's rolled out to other areas of Scotland. It might be that the number of property management systems like ours that implement something quickly, we might be just purely by our location, we might just be ahead of the game there, and it might be that we get a bunch of people who have to switch PMS, property management system, not our system. So, although I really don't like it on many levels, there is maybe something pushing in the other direction for us that's not. It might be. I don't know. We just need to see how it pans out. But.
Spoken like a true.
I think it's one of those things. The industry has supported a licensing scheme and a registration scheme for years, just not the conflated version that has actually come to pass. Yeah. So, yeah.
Well, I mean, it certainly sounds like you got your work cut out for you anyway at the moment, in long days, I'm sure.
Yeah, I've got the next 4 weeks will be interesting. So
yeah,
I'll be
and probably worth in terms of this, podcast, doing a follow up on this one, in a couple of months' time and see where it all is.
Absolutely,
that'd be quite interesting as well. Okay, well, look, we've run slightly over, but I think it's probably worth it because it's obviously a huge topic for you guys, and like I say, it's interesting to hear about. It sounded very much like a math lesson there for a while, which I glaze over with, but you've explained it very well.
I thought you came up with a good title for a new podcast there, Colin. That's math.
Yeah. That's maths. That's number one.
Right, okay, gentlemen. On that note, we shall leave it there. Thank you for your time, both of you, this morning. Thank you, Colin, for joining us and explaining all that.
Thank you for having
me. Good luck with it. And for everyone listening, thank you for listening. I hope you enjoyed it. Please join us again on our next podcast, which will be coming out very soon, and we'll talk about something equally as interesting then. Until then, goodbye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.